Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, a constitutional junkie and proud American, here to unpack some explosive news from the U.S. Supreme Court. On June 6, 2025, the court dropped two bombshell orders that handed massive victories to the Trump administration. These rulings aren't just legal wins. They're a bold stand for the president's power to run the government without lower courts or bureaucrats gumming up the works. Why does this matter? It's about making sure our government sticks to the founders' blueprint, where the president leads the executive branch to deliver results, like cutting waste and boosting efficiency so our tax dollars aren't squandered. Why should you care? A leaner, more accountable government means better services, lower costs, and a system that works for us, not some shadowy deep state. Whether you're all in for Trump or just fed up with red tape, these decisions could reshape how Washington operates. Let me share a quick story. A couple of years ago, I spent months chasing down a government agency to fix a simple paperwork error. It was like banging my head against a wall. That's why I'm fired up about Trump's push to streamline things, and these rulings give him the tools to do it. In this video, I'll break down these blockbuster rulings, dive into the constitutional principle of separation of powers behind them, and explain what this means for Trump's agenda and our country's future. So, grab a seat, and let's dive into this constitutional showdown. It's a big moment for America, and you won't want to miss what's next. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty of these Supreme Court wins, let's set the stage with a quick crash course on a principle that's at the heart of these cases, the separation of powers. As a constitutional nerd, I love this stuff, and it's key to understanding why these rulings are such a big deal. The U.S. Constitution splits our government into three branches to keep from getting too powerful. You've got the legislative branch, created by Article 1, which is Congress making the laws. Then there's the judicial branch, under Article 3, with the courts interpreting those laws. And finally, the executive branch, laid out in Article 2, led by the president, who enforces the laws and runs the government's day-to-day operations. This setup isn't just a brilliant design by the founders to protect our freedoms. Each branch has its own lane, and they check each other to prevent overreach. Think of it like a tug-of-war that keeps the system balanced. James Madison nailed it in Federalist Paper No. 51 when he wrote, "Ambition must be made to counteract ambition." That's the genius of checks and balances. The branches compete, and that competition stops them from trampling on our rights. For example, the president can veto a law, Congress can override that veto, and the courts can strike down laws that violate the Constitution. It's a system that's kept us free for over 2 centuries. Now, let's zoom in on the executive branch, because that's where these Supreme Court cases come into play. Article 2 of the Constitution vests all executive power in one person, the president. Not a committee, not a bureaucracy, but the president alone. This means the president has the authority to direct federal agencies, set priorities, and make sure the government runs smoothly. But here's where it gets messy. Sometimes, lower courts or regulatory bodies try to second-guess the president's decisions, claiming they know better. That's exactly what happened here, and the Supreme Court had to step in to remind everyone who's boss. Lately, we've seen a pattern of lower courts challenging Trump's executive actions, from immigration policies to government efficiency reforms. NPR reported on June 7, 2025, that critics worry Trump's use of executive orders, like creating the Department of Government Efficiency, stretches presidential power too far. NPR. Trump's executive orders spark debate, 2025. But here's the flip side. The Constitution gives the president broad authority to manage the executive branch, and the Supreme Court's job is to ensure that authority isn't undermined. These recent rulings are a direct response to lower courts overstepping their bounds, trying to block Trump's ability to audit agencies or protect internal communications. By stepping in, the court is saying, the Constitution sets the rules, and the president gets to call the shots in his branch. That's what makes these cases so critical. They're about keeping our government's structure intact. Let's get into the specifics of these wins next. All right, let's dive into the first big win. Social Security Administration v. American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, or AFSCME for short. This case is a huge deal because it's about President Trump's push to make the government leaner and cleaner through his Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. On January 20th, 2025, Trump signed an executive order creating DOGE to modernize federal agencies and root out waste, fraud, and abuse. Think of DOGE as a team of efficiency experts tasked with sniffing out things like duplicate Social Security payments or benefits going to ineligible recipients, say, people who aren't even supposed to be getting them. The Social Security Administration, or SSA, was one of DOGE's first targets because it holds sensitive data on almost every American. Social Security numbers, salaries, medical info, you name it. Here's where the drama starts. DOGE wanted access to SSA's records to check for fraud. But a federal judge in Maryland, Ellen Hollander, threw up a roadblock. On April 17, 2025, she issued an injunction saying DOGE couldn't access most of those records, arguing it was a fishing expedition based on little more than suspicion and could violate the Privacy Act. She said only SSA employees with a clear need should see that data. The lawsuit came from a coalition of unions led by AFSCME, plus the American Federation of Teachers and the Alliance for Retired Americans, represented by Democracy Forward, who claimed DOGE's access posed a massive privacy risk. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond backed Hollander, voting 9-6 to keep the injunction, with conservative judges in the minority saying there's no proof DOGE was mishandling data. Enter the Supreme Court. On June 6, 2025, the court's conservative majority 6 justices strong-sided with Trump in a 6-3 ruling, granting an emergency stay to lift Hollander's injunction. The unsigned order was crystal clear. Under the present circumstances, SSA may proceed to afford members of the SSA DOGE team access to the agency records in question in order for those members to do their work. Boom! This means DOGE can now dig into SSA records to hunt for waste and fraud. No questions asked. Solicitor General D. John Sauer argued that lower courts shouldn't micromanage the president's ability to manage his own branch, and the court agreed. This is a textbook separation of powers when Trump, as head of the executive branch, gets to direct agencies like the SSA, and no lower court can tell him otherwise. The 3 liberal justices, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson dissented. Justice Jackson wrote that giving DOGE unfettered data access creates grave privacy risks for millions, especially since DOGE didn't show a specific need or commitment to privacy safeguards. They're worried about sensitive data being misused, especially since DOGE, once led by Elon Musk, has been controversial for its aggressive tactics. Musk, by the way, called Social Security a Ponzi scheme and pushed hard for fraud audits, which some say fueled this fight. But conservative lower court judges noted there's no evidence DOGE has mishandled data so far, and SSA Commissioner Frank Bisignano hailed the ruling as a major victory for American taxpayers. Why does this matter? This ruling lets Trump's team tackle inefficiencies head-on, which could save billions if they find real fraud. Critics, per CNN, call it a scary day for privacy, but supporters see it as the president exercising his constitutional right to run the executive branch. It's a massive win for Trump's efficiency agenda, and it sets the stage for DOGE to keep digging across other agencies. Now, let's talk about the second win. U.S. DOJ Service vi Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, or CREW. This case is all about keeping DOGE's internal playbook under wraps, and it's another slam dunk for Trump. CREW, a left-leaning watchdog group, wanted to peek behind the curtain of DOGE's operations. In January 2025, they filed a Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, request for DOGE's emails, organizational charts, ethics pledges, and financial disclosures. Their argument? DOGE's slashing budgets and laying off federal workers with unusual secrecy, and the public deserves transparency. They claimed DOGE is a federal agency, subject to FOIA's disclosure rules. The Trump administration fired back, saying DOGE is just a presidential advisory body, not an agency, so it's exempt from FOIA. Things heated up when U.S. District Judge Christopher Cooper, an Obama appointee, ruled in March 2025 that DOGE was likely covered by FOIA. On April 15th, he ordered DOGE to hand over documents and even let CREW depose DOGE's acting administrator, Amy Gleason. A D.C. appeals court refused to block Cooper's order, so Trump's team took it to the Supreme Court with an emergency appeal. On June 6, 2025, the Supreme Court's conservative majority came through again, issuing a 6-3 stay to pause Cooper's order. The court said the discovery was not appropriately tailored and raised separation of powers concerns by prying into internal executive branch communications. In plain English, lower courts can't go on a fishing expedition into the president's private discussions with his advisors. The ruling doesn't settle whether DOGE is an agency that's for later, but it shuts down Crew's attempt to dig into DOGE's inner workings for now. The same liberal justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson dissented, likely arguing for more transparency, though the majority held firm that judicial restraint is needed when poking into executive deliberations. This is huge for Trump because it protects DOGE's ability to operate without outside groups snooping through their emails or deposing their leaders. Solicitor General Sauer argued that Crew's demands were a distraction from DOGE's mission to cut waste, and the court's ruling keeps those distractions at bay. Bloomberg Law noted that Crew wanted dirt on Elon Musk's role in DOGE, especially since he was its public face before stepping back amid a public spat with Trump. But the administration stressed that Gleason, not Musk, runs DOGE, and the court's stay keeps their focus on efficiency, not legal battles. The bigger picture? This ruling shields Trump's executive privilege, ensuring his team can strategize without every move being exposed. Critics, like Crew, say it hides DOGE's unprecedented cuts from scrutiny. But supporters argue it's common sense. The president's advisors need room to work. The Washington Post called this part of a pattern where the court backs Trump's emergency requests to curb lower court overreach, and it's a clear win for keeping DOGE's momentum going. So, what do these Supreme Court victories mean for Trump and for everyday Americans like us? Let's pull back and see the big picture. These rulings, Social Security Administration v. AFSCME and U.S. DOJ Service v. Crew, are a power boost for Trump's agenda. They do three critical things. They cement his authority over the executive branch, they send a warning to lower courts meddling in his plans, and they give the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, a clear path to slash waste and fraud. This isn't just about legal wins. It's about reshaping how our government works to serve us better. And it's got me fired up about what's possible. Let's start with DOGE's potential. These rulings let Trump's efficiency team dig deep into agencies like the Social Security Administration. But that's just the beginning. DOGE could target overlapping programs. Think of the dozens of job training initiatives scattered across departments, costing billions with little oversight. Or outdated IT systems. A 2024 Government Accountability Office report found federal agencies still use software from the 1990s, bleeding money on maintenance. The Heritage Foundation estimates that streamlining such inefficiencies could save $500 billion annually by 2030. Imagine what that could mean: tax cuts to keep more of your paycheck, or new roads and bridges without hiking debt. As someone who's dealt with sluggish government services, I see this as a chance to make Washington work for us, not against us. These rulings give DOGE the tools to turn that vision into reality, and that's a win for every taxpayer. But not everyone's on board, and we need to talk about that. Critics, like those at Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, argue DOGE's lack of transparency is a red flag. They say giving Trump's team unchecked access to sensitive data or shielding their internal communications could lead to abuse, echoing Justice Jackson's dissent about privacy risks. Some even call DOGE a black box. Per a June 8, 2025, New York Times piece, warning it might prioritize political loyalty over public interest. Fair point. But here's the counter. The president needs room to strategize without every email being dissected. Historical cases, like United States v. Nixon in 1974, show executive privilege exists to protect candid advice, not to hide crimes. These rulings don't make Trump a king. They ensure he can lead without lower courts or watchdogs micromanaging his every move. Balance matters, and the Supreme Court got it right. Looking ahead, these decisions set the stage for more legal battles. The court's conservative majority, led by Chief Justice John Roberts, is flexing its muscle on the emergency docket. The Washington Post reported on June 7, 2025, that this pattern granting Trump's urgent requests shows up in cases like the blocked Education Department layoffs. With 14 emergency appeals pending, per SCOTUS blog, We might see rulings on hot-button issues like immigration enforcement or tariff expansions. For example, Trump's push to deport undocumented immigrants en masse is tied up in lower courts, but these precedents suggest the Supreme Court might back his authority again. Politically, these wins are rocket fuel for Trump's 2026 midterm strategy. If DOGE delivers tangible savings, it could rally voters to keep the House Republican, ensuring Trump's agenda, maybe even Second Amendment reforms like deregulating suppressors, stays on track. But if Democrats flip Congress, expect pushback that could slow DOGE down. Why should you care about all this? Because it hits your wallet and your trust. We're all tired of bloated bureaucracies and rising costs, whether it's groceries or taxes. These rulings are a step toward a system that's accountable and efficient, one you can believe in again. The Supreme Court's conservative majority is drawing a line. The president runs the executive branch, not district judges or unions. That's a big deal for Trump's plans, but it's an even bigger deal for us. If DOGE uncovers fraud or cuts waste, it could free up resources for things we actually need, like better schools or safer communities. Of course, it's not a done deal. Trump needs to deliver results, and the court's got to stay consistent. But for now, these rulings are a massive leap forward, and I'm optimistic about where this could lead us over the next few years. All right, folks, that's the rundown on these massive Supreme Court victories for Trump. If you're as excited as I am about a government that's efficient and respects our Constitution, let's keep this momentum going. Stay informed on these game-changing rulings and their impact. They're shaping our future. Subscribe to get more breakdowns like this, and drop a comment below. What do you think of these decisions? Want me to dig deeper into DOGE's next moves or other Trump policies? Your feedback fuels this content. These wins are a big step toward a stronger, leaner America, but it's up to us to stay engaged and hold the system accountable. Thanks for joining me today. You patriots, you're the heart of this conversation. Keep standing up for our freedoms, and I'll be back soon with more on the fights that matter. Let's keep pushing for an America that works for all of us, one constitutional win at a time. See you in the next video.